Erev Tov, everybody, and this is really our first shir of the year. I don't know, I'll make a cute comment. I told a good friend of mine that from Montreal, actually, that Rosh Hashanah, Yom Adin, so people give charity before Yom Adin, but December 31st, wow, the tax receipt, that's a much bigger impact than Yom Adin. So we recognize whatever, for better or for worse, January the 1st, the beginning of the new year. There are Arba Rosh Hashanim Haim, so we'll add a fifth one. So Noah Notis has the distinct pleasure to kick off. I figure have to keep it in the family to kick off the year, our year shiurim. He chose it on his own many months ago, a few months ago. So I want to welcome Noah Notis. He's spoken a couple times before. He grew up in Allentown, and hello to his father I see online, and is pursuing his PhD in plasma physics at Columbia University. Spent a couple years in Yeshivat Har Etzion, a graduate of Princeton. He also did not put on his bio, but I happen to know that he represented the United States in Chidon Tanakh, and because of that, we have the pleasure of enjoying our two granddaughters. And thank you very much, where he met our daughter in Chidon. She was representing Canada. So without further ado, I guess beginning of the year, I can put a little family plug. Vakasha Rav Noah, we're looking forward to your share.
Um, Thanks so much for the opportunity to speak. And it's always a pleasure to share Torah with Torah in Motion. And also a pleasure to get the opportunity to learn a part of the Torah that I have never really appreciated to the extent that I do now. We'll be focusing on it's Parshat Vayehi this week, so we're concluding Sefer Breshit. So I'll be focusing on chapter 49 of Genesis, Perek Mem Tet, which is the poetic last will and testament, so to speak, of Yaakov Avinu, of Yaakov our father, and it's basically a poetic little couple lines each to each of the brothers. We'll talk a little bit about what those are in as we go through. I'll be focusing on three of them. Oh yeah, before we continue, it's good to have a Tanakh in front of you. So if you have access to a book version, that's good. I'll also have a source sheet that I'll be going through the whole time. If you have, and I'll share screen. If you have questions about anything, put it in the chat. It's great to get all the different translations. So if anybody has a Hertz, a GPS, whatever, take it out. And if you see anything interesting, put in the chat, and we'll talk about it at the end. I'll try to balance out a little bit, going into the level of detail to like analyze some of the words. In the poetry is a little hard to do, so you have to focus a little bit on the detail, but also to appreciate the bigger picture of what Yaakov is doing, how he's assessing the situation of the brothers at the end of Breshit, and also looking forward to the future. The title of this year, we'll just go analyze the title now, and hopefully I'll stay true to my word. The title this year is Looking Ahead and Looking Behind, which is a reference to one of my favorite works of 20th century literature. If you got the reference, you can put in the chat for brownie points at the end. I don't know what the brownie points are redeemable for. Don't look it up on Gemini. You'll get some like Buddhist sacred text reference. It's not that. It's something else. Demystifying Jacob's blessings. So looking ahead and looking behind, Yaakov is looking ahead towards the future of the Jewish people, but he's also looking behind. And what that is he's referencing. There are a couple different references to events that have already taken place in Breshit. Yaakov is interpreting them, giving his understanding of those events, and he's taking that interpretation of those events and looking forward to the future. That's looking ahead and looking behind, and demystifying Jacob's blessings. Demystifying because I've never really understood a lot of what's going on this week's in chapter 49, and I still don't. So we'll talk about the stuff that I hopefully have a little bit of understanding of, and Jacob's blessing in scare quotes because they're commonly referred to as Jacob's blessings, but we'll see it's a little bit more complicated than that. Not all of them are blessings. What is it? not all of them are blessings, so we'll talk about that as well. I'll share screen now. Um, so yeah, Rabbi Jay just shared the sources. Um, Figure out how to do this. See if I'm technologically advanced as my generation is supposed to be. Okay, can everybody see my sources? Okay, great. And again, if you have any questions or comments, put them in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. So first, we'll just do an overview of the parsha, and by overview, I really mean a sandwich of the parsha. So we'll look at the beginning and look at the end, and then we'll talk about the three brachot: Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi. Give me 1 second. I just want to mute my WhatsApp because it's making noises, and that's going to bother us the rest of the share if that keeps on going. Okay, great. So we'll talk about the sandwich ends of the of chapter 49. So the beginning and the end, and what Yaakov is referring to what he's about to do. So I'll read it. The translations here for all of the biblical texts are JPS 1985, I think. Why does the year matter? Well, we'll see in a little bit. JPS made some switcheroos as to their translations, which are a little bit telling. Okay, Vayikra Yaakov el banav. Jacob called his children. Vayomer, and he said, Heasfu v'agida lachem, gather together or congregate. V'agida lachem, and I'll tell you, et asher yikra etchem be'acharit hayamim. That which will befall you be'acharit hayamim in the coming days, the end days. We'll see it's a dispute. And it means different things in different parts of the Torah. But Hikavtsu v'shimu b'nei Yaakov v'shimu al Yisrael avichem. So gather together and listen, O children of Jacob, listen to Israel, your father. So from the beginning introduction of the following poetic vignettes, Yaakov is going to be doing some future telling. He's going to be telling them what will befall them. Be'acharit hayamim, what exactly that term means, we'll see a little bit. There are two options basically in different places in Tanakh. It either means the eschatological period, which is a fancy word for the end of time, messianic, post-history kind of days, or Acharit Hayamim in some places in Tanakh can actually just mean in latter days. It means that in a couple places in Dvarim. So JPS here takes the in days to come. Okay. Then I just put Ruvain Bechoriata because that's the first of the poetic vignettes, and then at the end Kol Ela. After he finishes with Binyamin, Kol Ela Shivtei Yisrael Shnei Masar. These are all the tribes of Israel, 12. And this is what their father spoke to them, and he blessed them each according to their blessing. So here it sounds like it's actually what he was doing is he wasn't just telling the future, he was also blessing them. So future telling, blessing. If you look at Shimon and Levi and Reuven, it seems like, well, there's actually a couple curses. So what is Yaakov doing here? There's like a mismatch a little bit between the beginning and the end. So Abarbanel, in his second question, Abarbanel's questions are always fun to read. You don't necessarily read everything. He's a very lengthy writer. But he asked the question of like, what's Yaakov doing? What exactly is the goal? Is it this future telling? Is it this brachot? And he kind of lands on the following thing. Vilmnam b'kavanat ilahama, which is not. We'll read the Barbanel. We'll see it might not fully describe what Yaakov is doing, but it might give us a little bit of a sense for at least the ones that we're going to see, which is Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, and Yehuda. Vilmnam b'kavanat ela, and it's also going to be true for Yosef, but I don't think we're going to have time to get to Yosef, or maybe we'll leave that for a discussion another time. Vilmnam b'kavanat ela ha'ma'amarim. In analyzing like the meaning of these following statements, v'habrachot and the blessings, da'atinota, my mind inclines. Sheyakov be'it motora tzalave'er me'izami banav yitzei shevet hamalchut v'amemshala bizarro. He wanted to clarify from which tribe would the kingship come. כי רעב ידע בכוח נבואותיו שהתרבה זרעו מאוד, והיה ראוי שימנו עליהם מנהיג או מלך שוטר מושל, ולפי שלא ייפול ביניהם קטטה על מינוי המלך. So he wanted to make sure, he realized that it's going to become a great nation, and he wanted to make sure that there wouldn't be a succession fight. Like different Hasidic dynasties, and different ways. Some of them have no Rebbe, some of them have multiple Rebbeim. So Yaakov wanted to make sure there was a clear choice of succession. He did a he did some research, or he did some analysis. Etc. Basically, he wanted to figure out who is going to be the king, and he wanted to analyze each of their characters to understand that. So we have these different possibilities for what it could be Yaakov is doing. He is telling them what's going to befall them. He's giving them blessings, or he is trying to clarify which one is going to be the leader. Okay. So I wanted to
be influenced by Adki Yavo Shilo, isn't he?
Yeah. So that was a Torah Motion Shir, I think, on Parshat Vayehi last year with Rabbi Yaakov Tauvis, who's currently my rabbi at Mount Sinai Jewish Center. So he talked about Ad Ki Yavo Shilo, but Ad Ki Yavo Shilo we'll see is perhaps the best example of what like a messianic period type. If you take Achareit Hayamim talking about eschatologically, that would be Ad Ki Yavo Shilo perhaps as like the best example of that. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit, just analyze what's Achareit Hayamim. We'll get into just to provide some detail for this broad outline. So in Yeshayahu Perek Bet, V'haya ba'Achareit Hayamim, in the end of days, Nachon yeh har Beit Hashem b'rosh ha'arim, the mountain of the house of God will be a Nachon, like well founded, and all nations will stream to the house of God, basically. But here, Achareit Hayamim clearly means an eschatological period, the end of days. In Dvarim, though, this is the introduction to Parshat Ha'azinu. It's really the end of Vayelach, but it's an introduction to Shirat Ha'azinu. What's the whole idea of the song of Ha'azinu? It's sort of this like little summary. There's a lot of summaries of Jewish history peppered throughout Tanakh. The Haggadah takes one of them, which is Mikra Bikurim, the reading of the passage of Bikurim. There's a couple in Tehillim. There's Parshat Ha'azinu. Each one of the different summaries of the history of the Jewish people really has its own it has its goal basically for what it's trying to get at. History is not just description. It has a purpose to it. So in Devarim, Moshe says, "Ki adati acharim oti ki ashchit hashchitun." For I know that after I die, you will do evil. V'sartam min haderech asher tziviti atchem, and you're going to leave the path that I commanded you. V'karat etchem hara'a be'acharei hayamim. Note that same word, v'karat, which is like et asher yikra etchem, that Yaakov says earlier. Be'achareit hayamim, in the achareit hayamim, which here you can't translate eschatologically, because what's Moshe saying? He's just saying, I know that you're going to do the bad stuff. Be'achareit hayamim. Hopefully the eschatological vision of the Jewish people is not the Jewish people doing evil. Hopefully it's something a little bit better than that. So you have Achareit Hayamim meaning different things in different places. How do we understand it in this context? Ramban quotes Medrash, which is in a Gemara in Pesachim as well. So Be'achareit Hayamim hey mimot hamashiach, these are the days of the Messiah. Ki Yaakov Yermozi Lavid Varav. Which Gershon mentioned. This is the reference to the end time. And Vrabotino Amru Shebikesh Yaakov Legalot Raketz V'nistal Kamiman Ashchina. Okay, so if he was going to talk about the end time, the Messianic period, I don't really see that Yaakov spoke about that. Maybe he did speak about it in this one pasuk. Maybe he wanted to, but V'nistal Kamiman Ashchina. Okay, maybe we're not going to talk about that because I want to talk about some other stuff. But this medrash, I think, is pointing out to the idea that Yaakov understood that they were entering a new time period. They were concluding the time period of the Avot, the patriarchal period. So he wanted to tell them an eschatological vision. He wanted to say, we have a goal, we have like something that we're looking forward to, and even though things are about to get really not so great in Egypt, don't worry, we're looking forward to the future. Just wanted to point out the Abarbanel, if we go back up to the top, he says, "V'alderech hapshat ba'acharit ha'amim romiz le'ezes man aroch shehu ba'acharit ha'amim be'erech ha'yimei hamidbar," when the Torah was given. So the Abarbanel just says, "Acharit ha'amim." It doesn't mean the messianic time. It just means sometime in the future, with respect to rather when the Torah was given, the days of the desert. Both of these approaches to what Acharit ha'amim mean, by the way, are two different versions of the JPS translation. So in Jacob, this is from JPS 1917, and Jacob, which goes like Rashi, and JPS 1985 goes like the Abarbanel. Okay, different Shivim Panim LaTorah, different ways of interpreting it. Okay, that's the summary of just overall what's Yaakov doing. Well, it's a little bit of a potpourri. There's a certain element of it which is brachot, a certain element of it which is telling the future, what's going to befall them. And but perhaps the best way of saying what it is Yaakov is assessing the situation of his children at the time of his death, and he's trying to help them understand what their positions are in the family, and that's what we'll be focusing on with Reuven, Shimon and Levi, and Yehuda. Okay, that is the end of section 1. Let's start with Reuven. So Reuven gets 2 psukim. There are 11 of these poetic vignettes, by the way, because Shimon and Levi are combined. Reuven gets 2 psukim. Shimon and Levi, I think, get 5. Yehuda gets 5. Shimon and Levi get 2 or 3. Yehuda gets 5. Yosef gets 5, and all the other brothers get less. So we'll start with Reuven. 2 psukim. Some words in here are very hard to translate. But we'll do our best. So Reuven bechori ata, Reuven, you are my firstborn. Kochi, my strength. Vereshit oni, the first of my. Oni is also a hard word. That's a word that's hard to translate. It could mean strength. It could mean my possession, like hon. Hon in Hebrew means like material wealth. Vereshit oni. It's this pasuk of is referenced later in or whatever is referenced later in the Torah. The same language is used in the law in Sefer Dvarim, of the father who has 2 wives. One of the wife that he likes has the second child, but the wife that he doesn't like, has the bechor. So ki hu reshido no, but the Torah legislates that you have to give the bechorah to the first child because hu reshido no. So that's the same word that's being used over here. It's a synonym basically for a bechor. Reshit oni, the first of my strength, my first possession. Yeter se'it v'yeter az. So exceeding in se'it and exceeding in strength. Se'it and az are terms that are used for the way that the bechor is better or gets more than all the other brothers. So se'it could mean like rank is how the JPS translates it over here. Se'it is like ki tisa et rosh, or naso et rosh b'nei gershon gam heim. So naso could mean to appoint them to a certain task. Yeter se'it v'yeter az. Az might be a reference to strength. It could be a reference to like the extra portion that the bechor gets. Okay, so that's what Reuven is supposed to be. He's kochiv reishinoni, yeter se'id v'yeter az. He was supposed to be yeter se'id v'yeter az. But, says Pasuk Daled, pachaz kamayim al totar. Pachaz, like water. Pachaz is a word that's hard to translate. We'll talk about 2 different options for what that means. Al totar, you will not have yeter. Yeter is the word over here. So al totar is like you will not have yeter. This excess in whatever thing the bechor is supposed to have excess in. Ki alita mishkavei avicha, for you ascended mishkavei avicha, the bed of your father. This is a reference to what Reuven did with Bilhah. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Az chilalta, Az chilalta yitzui Allah is the final statement of Reuven's poetic vignette. As chilalta yitzui Allah, there are like 3 different ways of translating this that I saw. Chilalta, Okay, we're getting a little bit technical here. Hopefully nobody falls asleep. And I'll also mention that my biblical Hebrew is not as great as other people's. So if you have any comments, put them in the chat. We'd love to hear. Chilalta, there are two different types of verbs. There's transitive verbs and intransitive verbs. So we'll split the different explanations based on, is this word chilalta transitive or is it intransitive? What does transitive mean? Transitive means that a word takes an object. So if I say, I ate bread, then ate is, this is English, ate in English, not ate in Hebrew, which there are multiple words, ate in Hebrew, ayin, aleph, whatever. So ate, ate, I ate bread. So I ate bread, ate is a transitive verb, bread is the object of that verb. So, but a word like I lived or I died, so those verbs, lived and died, aren't transitive. They're describing something about me. They don't take an object. So is chilalta a transitive verb or is it an intransitive verb? And if it's transitive, then what object is it taking? So as chilalta, first we'll do the intransitive verb that my brother Ben Notis, who's does a lot of Judeo-Arabic stuff, so he was around for the past 2 weeks, so he was able to help me with a lot of Sadia Gaon wrote a tafsir, which is like it's basically a translation of the Bible into Arabic. So he was able to help me with a couple of things. So the intransitive way of understanding chilalta appears in Rav Sadia Gaon's tafsir. So as chilalta means intransitive, you became profaned. You, Ruvain, became profaned because yitzui Allah. Okay, well, some of you might be noticing, well, chilalta looks like it's in binyan PL, which is normally binyan that is transitive. So you might want to learn the pasuk as being transitive. So you'll say, as chilalta, then you profaned yitzui Allah, the mounter of my couch, the one who ascends my bed. Okay, well, that's me, Yaakov, speaking. Or midrashically, it might be something else. So as chilata yitzui Allah, or maybe as chilata, then you profaned yitzui, my bed. You profaned my bed. Allah, maybe like he ascended or something like that. Okay, so hopefully not everybody has been lost at this point. But three different ways of understanding this last term. As chilata yitzui Allah, then you became profaned. You, Ruvain, lost your bechora because yitzui Allah, because you ascended. Or maybe you became profaned because you profaned the ascender of my bed, i.e. me, Yaakov. Or you profaned yitzui, my bed, because you Allah, because you ascended. Okay, three different ways of understanding this. Just want to, you read these, you hear these words in shul, hopefully, like, every year. They're very hard to understand. So hopefully you'll be able to clarify a little bit of that. This last term, which we just translated, Divrei Yamim, actually has an interpretation of it. So something interesting, that Divrei Yamim was written in the beginning of the Second Temple period. How do I know that? Because the last verse of Divrei Yamim describes how Koresh, the king of Persia, allowed the Jews to resettle back in the land of Israel and build the temple. Divrei Yamim is basically a summary, two-book summary. Okay, two-book because, two-book summary of all of Jewish history, starting with Adam, and the first pasuk is Adam Shet Enosh. It's basically a lot of genealogies for the first couple of chapters. And it eventually gets to the Shvatim, gets to the 12 tribes. And when it starts the genealogy of Reuven, it has a little bit of a description. Who is Reuven? What's Reuven's position in the family? So two psukim, Uvnei Reuven Bechor Yisrael, Kiwa Bechor. So the children of Reuven, who is the Bechor of Israel, because he is the Bechor. Okay, Kihu Bechor, meaning that he is the Bechor, maybe. Ki is a word that could take multiple meanings in Hebrew. Uvechal lo Yitzuei Aviv. But in his profaning of Yitzuei Aviv, the bed of his father, this is already an interpretation of this week's Parsha. Uvechal lo Yitzuei Aviv. What understanding does the composer of Divrei Yamim take for our pasuk here? He understands that it's Uvechal lo is a transitive verb, and Yitzuei Aviv is he transitively profaned the bed of his father. So it would maybe be something like Az Chilata, you profane Yitzu'i, my bed, Allah, because he ascended, or something like that. And I just wanted to appreciate a little bit what Divrei Yamim is doing here. It's kind of like it's kind of just summarizing our whole parsha over here. In his profaning of his father's bed, so the Bechora was given to Yosef, but not for Yosef to like have the yichus of Bechora. Okay, we're not going to try to get into this. It's not a shir in Divrei Yamim. Ki Yehuda gavar be'achav. So Yosef is the Bechor, but not really the Bechor, because Yehuda gavar be'achav. Yehuda became strong among the brothers. Lo nagid mimenu bechora liYosef. So I just wanted to appreciate Divrei Yamim is interpreting what this very obscure pasuk means here, and also trying to give an account of how the hierarchy of the brothers came about, and what that means. Okay, I just wanted to note here, this is another example of Divrei Yamim interpreting psukim in the Torah that I heard first from Rav Amnon Bazak at Yeshivat Har Etzion. So there are two psukim about how to cook the Korban Pesach. In Shmot, it says you're not supposed to do bishul to it. You're not supposed to cook it in water. You're only supposed to cook it in fire. Ki imetzli esh, you're supposed to roast it in fire. But if I look in Dvarim, I see in Parshat Vayehi, which is the what we read on some of the holidays, Sham tizbach Pesach barav kivua shemesh moitz uvishalta be'achalta. So it actually says I'm supposed to do bishul, not sli, to the Korban Pesach. So what's going on? So Divrei Yamim interprets that vayivashlu Pesach ba'esh kamishpat. They did bishul ba'ish. So this is just a cool example that I heard from Bazak, that about Divrei Yamim interpreting psukim in the Torah, and it's actually like kind of like a drush that Divrei Yamim is doing. Okay, so that's the same thing going on over here with the introduction to the genealogy of Bnei Reuven. Okay, that's the final pasuk. What does pachaz mean? So pachaz kamayim. So pachaz kamayim, hapachaz. So that's just to refresh, pachaz kamayim. That's the beginning of verse 4. Pachaz kamayim, they translate as unstable as water, but it's basically pacha. You were pachaz like water. What does pachaz mean? Pachaz means pachaz. So there are different interpretations. The first one that we'll go over is that pachaz means it's something. It's gonna, whatever it means, it's gonna be something like water, right? Because that's what Yaakov says. The first interpretation that we'll go over is that it means like hasty, or there was a good word that I had earlier, hasty, or let me try to remember what I was going to say. I should have written it down. Impulsive, hasty or impulsive, like water. So Rashi explains hapachaz v'habehala sher miharta leharot kascha. So the pachaz and behala, which is also like which could be another synonym for mihirut, for quickness or hastiness. Asher, like bevihilu yatzanu mitzrayim, like some people say in the beginning of their seder, we left Mitzrayim bevihilu, which is bechipazon. Asher miharta, that you hasten laharot kascha, to show your anger. Reuven, you were too quick to show your anger. Kamayim halalu, like water, hamim maharim limrutzatam, that hastens down its path. Lakach al totar. So therefore, you will not have the excesses of the Bechora. You will not be considered the Bechor. Ramban takes the same interpretation. He cites a verse that might be a source for what it means. The verse is mean anashim reikimu fochazim on Avim. This is a refresher on Sefer Shoftim. When Avimelech, the illegitimate son of Gidon, wants to murder his 70 brothers, he hires as hitmen anashim reikim, empty men, ufochazim, and pochazim, and men with the quality of pachaz. Well, what does pachaz mean? Okay, so Ramban says it means reikim v'nim harim. I don't know if he necessarily knows that from this pasuk, because it's a little bit obscure there as well. Kalei hadat, men that can easily be convinced to do something. V'rabotinu mishtamshim botadir. His real proofs come more from rabbinic Hebrew, where it's used in a couple places in Shas as something that that means some sort of like impulsive or hastiness or ability to be quickly convinced of something. The Ramban has an interesting comment. Vitachin shehu hafuch min chipazon. He wants to say it's a hafuch, which in English is called a metathesis, which is when you have words that letters in them get flipped. So most famous example of this perhaps is keves, kivsa, and kispa. So there are two words for sheep in Hebrew, kivsa and kispa. The middle letters get switched. Another example is like there's a pasuk in Tehillim, uvoshaha chama uvechafra halvana. So the sun will be ashamed, and the levana, the moon, will be chafra. What's chafra? It will dig. No, chafra is a hafuch of cherpa. It's v'chafra v'cherpa. So it's the moon will be embarrassed. So the same thing over here. Pachaz is a hafuch min chipazon. It's a switcheroo of chipazon. Okay, and my brother, who I mentioned was around, I was talking about this with him. So he cited a poem of Shmuel HaNagid, Shmuel the Prince, that was composed around 1053. So Zman Ra Yitzi Kacha Befachzo V'Chet Zonav. So here, the Nagid in his poetry actually put these words right next to each other. Pachzo V'Chev Zonav V'Chipazon V'Chev Zonav. It's rashness, he translated it as, and Pachaz is the same thing. So the Ramban wants to say it's a metathesis, it's a hefach of these two words. So perhaps he was preempted in this kind of analysis by the Nagid in the 1000s. Okay, so I thought that was pretty interesting. What's like the meaning of this? Why does this all matter in terms of Reuven's position in the family? So there are three stories of Reuven's that we really need to understand in order to see why this pachaz really matters. So in the first, there are three stories where Reuven really his personality comes out. So the first one is the one that Yaakov references, which is his sin with Bilhah, where he in the Pshat he sleeps with Bilhah, who's the Pilegesh of his father. Bilhah was Rachel's shevcha, Rachel's maidservant that Yaakov took for a wife, or took as a wife when Rachel was unable to have children. The second story that we'll look at is Reuven's actions in the sale of Joseph, when he says originally the brothers wanted to kill Yosef, and Reuven says, no, don't kill him, throw him in a pit. And the third story that we'll look at is Reuven's trying to convince his father after they come back from the first time from visiting Yosef in Egypt. The brothers need food, and they try to convince their father. Yosef had taken Shimon, and they try to convince and said, you can't come get food unless you have Binyamin. Reuven tries to convince their father to give him Binyamin so that they can go back to Egypt and get more food from Yosef. Why is the pachaz important? The hastiness important in all of these stories? I think we'll start with the last one. So what's the difference between, and a lot of what we'll do here is try to understand what's the difference between Reuven and Yehuda, because Divrei Yamim makes that contrast already, and it's also there in Yaakov's words here in this week's parsha. Okay, so in the final story, Reuven says the following: Vayehi, Vayomer Alehem Yaakov Avihem Oti shikaltem, you've caused me loss. Yosef enenu v'Shimon enenu v'Benyamin tikachu alai hayu chulanu. You basically caused me loss. I'm not gonna. I'm missing Yosef. I'm missing Shimon. You want to take Binyamin? No way, Jose. Vayomer Reuven al aviv lemor. Reuven says to his father, "Et shnei banai tamidim lo avienu ilacha tnao toal yadi v'ani yashivanu ilacha." I will kill my two sons if I don't bring you Binyamin back. Don't worry, I got this, Dad. I'm gonna bring Binyamin back, and I'll kill my two sons if I don't do that. That's my assurance. That's your insurance that you have that I will follow through with this. Vayomer Yehuda, Yaakov, his father, doesn't take it. Vayomer lo yered b'ni machem ki achiv made. Basically, I don't want to test this out. I don't want to lose Binyamin. Okay. Fast forward. Yehuda seemingly does something a little bit similar. I mean, he has a statement. V'harav kavid baretz. The famine is heavy in the land. They finish the food. Yehuda says, give me Binyamin to go to Yosef, and I will assure you that I will take him back. Anochi arvenu miyadi tivakshanu. And if I don't bring him, I will have sinned to you forever. Kiluleit ma'amanu. If we hadn't, if we would have been able to, return twice already if you would have given to him to us originally. Okay, so what's the difference between Reuven and Yaakov? So the Medrash Bereshit Rabbah, quoted by Rashi here, gives one interpretation, which is that Reuven was a bechor shota. He was a bechor, and pardon my French, he was an idiot. He says, I'll kill my two sons if I don't get Binyamin back. Well, who are Reuven's sons? Reuven's sons are Yaakov's grandsons. So that's a pretty silly thing to suggest. He didn't understand. He said something ridiculous. Yehuda, on the other hand, appreciated the severity of the situation. He said, he understood how serious it was. Okay, Ramban takes a little bit of a different understanding, which is more relevant for the word pachas here. So what was I'm not going to read it inside. What was the difference between Yehuda and Reuven? There's three words that are the difference. V'hara'av kaved ba'aretz. These words of v'hara'av kaved ba'aretz, and the famine was heavy in the land. Reuven tries to fix the situation right away. The moment that they get back from Egypt, Reuven says, don't worry, we'll take Binyamin, it'll be okay. I'll kill my two sons if I don't bring him back to you. Then Yaakov says, no way. Then v'hara'av kaved ba'aretz. Time passes. The situation worsens. Yehuda then sees the opportunity and suggests that they go back to Egypt. Reuven, characteristically, is a man of pachas. He is a man of impulsiveness and hastiness, and he doesn't understand that certain things take time. Let's go backwards. Let's rewind to the first situation that we want to talk about, which is Reuven's sin with Bilhah. Rachel dies. Yaakov's favorite wife, the wife that he was supposed to have, and the only wife that he was supposed to have. Vatamat Rachel batika ver b'derech Efrata hi beilachem. Vayatzev Yaakov matzival kavurata hi matzevet gra Rachel ayom. Rachel dies in childbirth tragically on the way back to Beitlachem. Vayisa Yisrael vayita alo mehala Migdal Eder. They moved to Migdal Eder, a different place. Vayihi b'shkon Yisrael ba'aretz hahi. When Yisrael was dwelling in that land, in that very land, the place that he moved right after Rachel died. Vayelech Reuven vayishkav et Bilhah pilegesh aviv vayishma Yisrael. Reuven goes and he sleeps with Bilhah, the pilegesh of his father, in the pshat, vayishma Yisrael. Reuven couldn't wait. He wanted to grab the opportunity, perhaps out of anger, as Rashi explains. We'll look at I don't know if I had Rashi over here, but Rashi basically explains Reuven was angry. We saw that Rashi already. Reuven was angry. He showed his pachas, his hastiness, and he showed his anger, his impulsiveness, and he sinned. If we look at Ramban, let me see if I can find it over here. Ramban basically, I'm not going to read it inside, but Ramban basically explains that Reuven wasn't just acting out of some kind of impulsive anger. He was trying to invalidate Bilhah as a wife for his father. Bilhah was Rachel's shevcha, it was Rachel's maidservant. Reuven was worried that his mother, in Ramban's account, Reuven was worried that his mother would be sidelined because of Rachel's shevcha. And Leah would become like, second best to Bilhah, who's a shivcha, a maidservant. That's something that Reuven couldn't stand for, so he wanted to invalidate Bilhah. He didn't understand, he didn't take into account that wouldn't work, and what that would lead to in the family, and what that would do to himself and his position in the family. So that's his pachas, that's his hastiness and his impulsiveness. That's not something that a leader can have. A leader has to be more mitunim badin, says Avot, has to be more have the ability to look at all ends and to perceive how things will pan out, and to act carefully and with judgment. And then the other case though that I think we'll skip over is Reuven's position. We'll talk about it later. Reuven's so we'll skip over it for now. Reuven's actions in the sale of Yosef. So that's one interpretation for what pachaz is. Reuven's pachaz is the reason that he wasn't able to have the bechora. This pachaz means hastiness. Reuven acted hastily in three cases, but two that we talked about. His actions with Bilhah and his suggestion to Yaakov to go down to Egypt again. And that was his inability. The importance is that's his inability to be a bechor. A bechor, the leader, needs to be somebody who's careful, calculated. That wasn't who Reuven was. Okay, there's another interpretation for what water is, for what pachaz is, that Rav Hirsch has, and that choser yitzivut kamayim. Yitzivut means stability. Choser yitzivut means instability. Water is something that's shapeless. It's a liquid that you can fit into any container that you want. I could make a container like a cup, a container like a cube, a container like a big long cylinder. Water will take the shape of whatever I put it in. Shape shifting. And Reuven as a personality, he was a shapeshifter. We'll talk about that in a little bit. That's another interpretation for what pachaz is, and that might be another reason why Reuven was unable to be the leader, to be the bechor. Okay, Reuven summary. He can't be the bechor anymore because he acted improperly with Bilhah. Maybe that wasn't the problem in and of itself, but it showed his pachaz. It showed his instability, his impulsiveness, and his hastiness, and that's not something that we can have in our leader. Okay, let's move on to Shimon and Levi. Okay, great. So Shimon and Levi. Shimon and Levi get 3 psukim. Shimon v'Levi achim, we'll get right to it. Shimon v'Levi achim. Shimon and Levi are achim. Achim can mean 2 different things here, according to the Mefarshim. Achim can mean a pair. Shimon and Levi are 2 peas in a pod. They do everything together. Achim can also mean they're brothers. They're very fraternal individuals, and they're brothers that care a lot about their siblings. Klei chamas mechirotehem. We'll see those 2 explanations pan out as we go along. Klei chamas mechirotehem. Maybe the point is they're brothers. That's a great thing, but klei chamas mechirotehem. Their weapons are tools of lawlessness. Mechirotehem is a very hard word to translate. It could mean, Rashi even he has to go to Greek basically to explain what it means. He takes a Greek word and says there's a Greek word that's I don't know if I brought it here. I'm not sure I did. You can look later on your own. He takes a Greek word to say means the word sword. So klei chamas, weapons of Hamas, which is a word that has refers back to Parshat Noach. Mechirotehem are their swords. Bisodam al tavo nafshi, v'kalam al tichad kvodi, kiva pam hargu ish v'irtzonam ikru shor. Basically, let me have no part in their gatherings, because they killed a man they killed men with their anger, uv'irtzonam, and with their will, ikru shor. Ikru shor could mean they maim oxen, as a translation here. Shor can also mean a city, like shor could mean a choma, a wall. This word also appears later in Yosef's bracha. So ikru shor could mean they destroyed a city, the city of Shechem. This is what we're talking about over here. Kiva pamahar guish v'irtzonam ikru shor. So the looking behind that we had by Reuven was Reuven's sin with Bilhah. The looking behind that we have over here by Shimon and Levi is their destruction of the city of Shechem. Arura pam kiaz, their anger is cursed because it is potent, it's fierce. Ve'evratam ki kashata, and their anger, evra means anger, ki kashata, for it is, they translate as relentless, but perhaps, also another the synonym for potent, it's very, very strong. Achal kim bi'akov, I shall spread them among Jacob, vafitzim b'Yisrael, scatter them among Israel. Okay, so when Shimon and Levi are together, they do the wrong things. So Yaakov wants to spread them out. Perhaps the idea is that they have qualities which are good qualities. Says the Ramban, Yomar Balei Achva, ki yicham libam el achutam, yilamed alehem zechut. Reuven, Shimon, and Levi were the paradigmatic brothers. They really cared so much about their siblings, but they took it to the wrong places. Perhaps they shouldn't be punished so terribly. But on the other hand, what they did was unforgivable. It was evil. What the Ramban thinks is correct way to interpret the verse is achim here means two peas in a pod. So we have these two different explanations for achim. The mitigation of evil deeds by the fact that we do them together is a concept that I'm sure has been I know for a fact that it's been said before on a Torah Motion podcast. So let's look back at a Parshat Noach. Basically, this incredible medrash that Rashi quotes. Why was Dor HaMabul punished more harshly than Dor HaFlaga? Why was the generation of the flood punished more harshly than the generation of the Tower of Babel? The generation of the flood was they didn't act theologically with evil. The generation of the tower, on the other hand, they pashtu yadam bikar. They wanted to attack God, basically, according to how Rash. They had a theological issue. So the point is that Dor HaMabul, they acted with evil towards each other. Dor HaFlaga, the generation of the tower, on the other hand, they had ahava v'reut b'neihem, shnemar safa achad v'dvarim achidim. They had this cohesion to them. So that was Shimon and Levi. They had a cohesion to them. They understood their responsibilities toward their brothers. And perhaps this is what Levi really is. Hil v'shamai kiblu mehem hil omer havei hamidav shel Aaron oiv shalom v'rodiv shalom oiv abriyodim karvan Torah. Levi understands what it means to be a brother. It means to be part of a people. On the other hand, Breshit Rabbah cites the whole irony in this whole interpretation, which is that yes, they were fraternal towards Shimon and Levi. They were fraternal towards their brothers, Achim Ladina, and their sister Achim Ladina. They acted towards great brothers toward their sister Dina, but not towards their brother Yosef, Lola Yosef. So perhaps it undermines the whole fraternal enterprise if you can, choose who you're acting with responsibility towards. Okay, that's a little bit about the Achim here. I wanted to, as I was learning for this year, I came across a really fascinating way. It's something I was thinking about earlier, actually, and came across it in Rashi, a later medrash, and the Barbanel, which is how it's Rashi on this week's Parsha, which is why I guess it's a fair game. Rashi says Shimon v'Levi Achim, and he goes on to describe how Shimon and Levi were actually the initiators of Mechirat Yosef. Or I guess their plan, it wouldn't have been Mechirat Yosef, it wouldn't have been the sale of Joseph, it would have been the murder of Joseph. Shimon v'Levi Achim, be'etzah achad al Shechem v'al Yosef, vayomru ish al achiv. The way that the portion of Mechirat Yosef, the sale of Joseph, starts is that Yosef was sent to this place called Dotan, or he was sent towards Shechem. He was wandering around. He found a man. Man said, "Go to Dotan to look for your brothers." So vayamru ish al achiv. And Ish said to his brother, "Mihem, who were the brothers that suggested to kill Joseph? Im tomar Ruvain or Yehuda. If you said it was Ruvain or Yehuda, hare lo yiskimu ba'arigato. They didn't agree to kill him. The way that the Tanchuma has this is lo haita sinatam shlema. That's not in the Tanchuma. That was something else. Okay, fine. Hare lo yiskimu ba'arigato. Ruvain and Yehuda didn't agree to kill him eventually. Ruvain wanted to throw him in a pit to save him later. And Yehuda wanted to sell him to make money, or perhaps as a way of we'll talk about Yehuda in a little bit. But the way that Rashi understands now is Reuven and Yehuda, they didn't want to kill him. They wanted to do other things with him. Im tomar b'nei Ashvachot, if it was the children of Bilhah and Zilpah, all the other brothers except for Binyamin and Yisachar and Zvulun, hare lo haita sinatan shlema. So it couldn't have been them. Yisachar v'Zvulun, I mean, come on, fifth and sixth brothers, like what are they important for anyway? Lo hayu medabrim b'fnei achihem hagdolim mehem. They wouldn't have spoken before their older brothers. Al korchach Shimon v'Levihem shekra'am avihem achim. So it must have been Shimon and Levi that their father called them achim. So according to Rashi here, this poetic statement towards Shimon Levi is actually a callback towards Mechirat Yosef, the sale of Joseph, which is interesting because Mechirat Yosef is actually really absent from the looking behind portion of these brachot. According to Rashi, though, it appears here. It could appear later. Looking now, I don't think we're going to have time for it. But the phrase "miteref b'ni alita" that Yaakov says to Yehuda. Miteref might also be a reference to the sale of Yosef. I'm really sad that time is running short, so we're probably not going to get to it. So look at the source sheets for looking at Yehuda. What is just wanted to point out, Rashi takes this idea and runs with it. He says it in other places of his Perush on Chumash. So why was Shimon the one that was incarcerated? Well, Rashi says that Shimon hu hishlich lapor. Shimon was the one that threw him into the pit. Hu shamar Levi. Shimon was the one that said to Levi, "Hine bala chalamot halazeba." Rashi takes this idea. He thinks that it's true and says it in other places in his parish as well. Shimon and Levi were the ones that wanted to kill Joseph. Well, this is really incredible because they're the ones that had the fraternal. This lends extra meaning to this Breshit Rabbah that I just talked about. They're brothers to Dinah, but not to Yosef. Well, they were the very ones that wanted to kill Yosef. So their understanding about achva of brotherhood is really lacking. I think it also has this. Thank God I have a lot of really interesting brothers-in-law and sister-in-law. So they say a lot of cool things. So I was talking to my brother-in-law Elnatan, and it reminded me of this way of understanding of Rashi's understanding of the sale of Yosef. Rashi thinks that there was two or maybe even one person, Shimon, that wanted to kill Yosef. It was not all of the brothers. It was only one of them, and despite the fact that it was only one of them, it ended up being something that they all went along with in some way or another. Both Reuven and Yehuda, even though they opposed it, they still sort of went along with it. And I think that speaks volumes to what human nature is. And Elnatan told me about this Robert Aumann, who's he got a Nobel Prize. He has a theorem, which is a cool theorem, but he pointed me to an article by this professor called Scott Aronson, which basically talks about the application of this kind of like game theory type of thing, that there's this concept called common knowledge. Everybody can know something, but unless everybody knows that everybody else knows it, it lacks a certain type of power. So which is why like dictatorships are able to, basically 95% of people in a dictatorship don't like the leaders. Well, why can't they just get together and and get rid of the dictator? Maybe there are a lot of other reasons, but one of the reasons is because they can't get together in the first place because not everybody knows that it's common knowledge that everybody doesn't like the dictator. So maybe according to Rashi, that might be what's happening here. Most of the 95% of the brothers, or whatever, you could do the math, 90% of the brothers or so didn't want Yosef to be killed or to be sold. But they all sort of had to go along with it because it wasn't common knowledge that they didn't want it to happen. And I think it says a lot about people in general, but also about the situation of the brothers. When something isn't common knowledge, it means that there's a breakdown in the achva. It means that there's a breakdown in the brotherhood and the family structure. People are not on the same wavelength, which is really true for what happened with their family. Okay, so two reasons why this Rashi is really important. So one reason is that it shows that they had this understanding of achava, but it wasn't really full. It was only towards certain people and not others, which was a big problem. And the other reason is it shows that a small minority of people are able to do a lot of harm because the opposition to them is not common knowledge. So that's Rashi on Shimon Levi. Okay, let's see, Rabbi Kalman, how much time do I have left?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, so I can speak for 5 minutes and then questions.
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's go back to sharing. So we'll go a little bit into Yehuda, and then we'll do the summary. Is my screen visible again? Okay, you could see my screen, right? Okay. So that's Ruvain, that's Shimon and Levi. Yehuda ata yoducha achacha yadcha be'oref oivecha yishtachavu lecha b'nei avicha. So Yehuda, your brothers praise you, they accept you. Yadcha or they will. Yadcha be'oref oivecha. This is the first reference that we had to like future military success, basically. Yehuda, you'll have full command over your enemies. Yishtachavu lecha b'nei avicha. Your brothers will, the sons of your father, so that means also from the other mothers, will bow down to you. Yaakov here is he is taking Yosef's dream and applying it to Yehuda. It's like a very fancy rhetorical move that Yaakov is doing. He is basically saying like Yosef, Yehuda is really going to be the leader. Gur Aryeh Yehuda. Yehuda is a Gur Aryeh. He's like a lion's cub. Miteref beni alita. You have risen from Teref. My son, you have risen from Teref. This note here under Teref is what's called a tipcha. We'll see that it stops a phrase. So if you want to read it based on the Tameh HaMikra, the trup. So you should really read it as miteref b'ni aldita. From teref, from prey, b'ni aldita, you have arisen. Kara ravatz karyeh uchlavi mi yikimenu. He has crouched down like a lion. Who can rouse him? Yikimenu is like you don't want to rouse a sleeping lion. Maybe it'll be really hard, but when you do, you'll be in big trouble. So miteref b'ni aldita. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that phrase. So there are different ways of interpreting it. So one way of interpreting it is that of the Radak and Rashbam, other Pashtanim. Is that it's a reference to Yehuda's future military success. There's also an understanding of it as teref, as a reference to the looking behind part of Yaakov's blessings, which are Yehuda's mistakes. You have risen from your mistakes, Yehuda. That's why you're fitting to be a leader. Yehuda is a person that made mistakes in life, but he learned from them and ultimately did better. So miteref b'ni alita, the Medrash says, is a reference to the teref of Tamar and the teref of Yosef. Miteref b'ni alita, mitarpo shel Yosef alita v'nit alita, mitarpo shel Tamar. Okay, what's the and Rasag has another interpretation of this as being just about Yosef. I think we'll maybe just run through one or two more things. So did Yehuda really act properly in Mechirat Yosef? One of the problems for interpreting this as talking about Yehuda's actions with Yosef, that in very classic Tosafistic manner, the Balei HaTosfot point out, and the Chizkuni in their wake point out that, well, in the Talmud, there's actually a statement that anybody who blesses what Yehuda did is considered somebody who curses God. In other words, you bless what Yehuda did, that's a really bad thing. You fully, you misunderstand something and you're cursing God. Ein zem harizem mina eitz. V'al zen emar botzea barich ni'etz Hashem. If you bless somebody who's botzea here is a reference to Yehuda's statement of ma'betza, but it's also a reference to what Yehuda was doing. He was doing a betza, which is like a compromise. So that's one problem interpreting that Yehuda's actions here as being good. You could say, well, either you could say it's not a reference to it, or you could say maybe Yehuda did what he needed to do at the moment in order to make sure that Yosef wouldn't have gotten in a worse position, or maybe the Talmud is really just saying that Yehuda did the wrong thing in the first place. He was totally motivated by money. I think we'll pause here on that because time is really running out. But look through some of the sources. I guess I just basically the point is like there's a lot here. We've basically made it through parts of two and a half of the poetic vignettes. There's a lot more to talk about. I hope we got a little bit of a taste of Yaakov's looking ahead and looking behind, looking towards the future of the Jewish people, but also looking behind at the events of the past with Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi. A little bit of Bilhah and Ruvain, Shimon and Levi, Shechem, and their contribution to Mechirat Yosef, and also Yehuda with Tamar and Yosef. And hopefully this could spur us and prompt us to analyze and learn this parak a little bit better. Okay, I think we'll open for the questions now in the chat box.
Anybody wants to ask any questions, Vakasha? Gershon, go ahead.
Israel left Mitzrayim in haste. Wouldn't Reuven therefore have been a great leader when they left Mitzrayim?
Yeah, so I think I would say like there are different it could be chipazon is something that was needed for that moment in time. Is chipazon a good thing or a bad thing in a geula? So the Navi says, I think it's Yeshayahu, I don't remember, that in the future geula, the final geula won't actually be b'chipazon. A chipazon is something that might not have been a good thing. And when the Jews left Egypt, it could have been something that was necessary for the moment. But ultimately, we don't want the future geula to be b'chipazon, and that says something about hastiness isn't really something that we want. It's necessary sometimes, but perhaps not in a as even the ideal for a situation of geula, but even for but especially not for a leader of like a stable, kind of rulership. That would be my response. Maybe there are different ways of approaching it.
It's interesting that the criticism of Shimon and Levi is usually considered to be because of Shechem and not because of Yosef.
Right. Yeah. So I think totally in like the plain, surface level reading, it's certainly talking about Shechem. Shechem is certainly there. I wanted to bring in Rashi because I thought it was not necessarily a pshat. It's just a really interesting medrash that I think it says something about human nature a little bit, but also about what their understanding was of what brotherhood means.
Thank you very much. It was a nice.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I
Okay,
just.
so okay. Yeah, I was just wanted to go through
No,
the
yeah.
chats.
What do you want to say? Or do you want to take a look in the chat box?
Yeah. So for the tamim for az chilalta, Yitzuiala has a separating tam under chilalta and seems to phrase Yitzuiala together. So that would seem to support the Rav Sadia Gaon's interpretation of az chilalta as being like an intransitive type verb. You became profaned because Yitzuiala, because he ascended my bed. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think I saw anybody who uses the tamim there, but that's a really interesting point. Meaning, obviously, the tamim are there and should be used. I didn't see any. What I mean to say is, I didn't see any commentaries that analyze what the tamim are there as a way of translating the pasuk. But I guess Ellen is that commentary. An iPad computer said, "Does anyone use water equals Torah here for pachas kamayim?" I don't know. That's an interesting question. Yeah, water. Rav Hirsch makes the point of pachas kamayim, using water as a way of interpreting what the word pachas means is really hard to do because mayim is like the ultimate metaphor that we compare everything to. So it's hard to back out what pachas means just from water, just from Torah. Sorry, just from water. Yeah.
Could be the word hilalta is the word from some relation to the word of Halil, the instrument,
like a flute.
Like a flute?
So I think the idea might be that Khalil it's hollow. has a
it's
flute has
chalul.
to be exactly, like a flute has to be hollow. So profanity is I don't know, maybe this is going on a limb, but I think to lechalel means to hollow out some kind of, you're taking out some of the kedusha of something. You're taking out some of the, maybe not kedusha, but could be just position
You empty
or
out God.
rank.
That's a
Yeah,
classic definition. I think I've always have a chilul Hashem, just like a flute, right? You
right.
empty out. You take God out of the
You
equation.
empty out the core. You empty out the core.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ah,
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you
all
very
right.
much. I imagine some of you we've had, issues, not just us, but there's a whole thing with the emails that we're working on it. It takes time. I don't have to get into the whole explanation why, but hopefully it will clear up. But it may take another week or so, which is one of the reasons we haven't switched yet any of our passcodes, which we will do for the winter. We sort of gear up for the new session. So we're just going to keep everything on fall. All the classes are going on. I know I've gotten a lot of emails from people, they've missed classes. Just look on the website. I'll be giving my class tomorrow at 9:25 on the Siddur. Rabbi Liebtag will be giving his class 11:15 on Sunday. Happens to be Benny Gesundheit, Lo Noten Ashir Shelo Bivrit Al Sefer Tilim B'Yom Rishon. But we'll have all our regular classes next week. So even if you don't get an email, you may get them late. Just to be aware of that. I think it's mainly on Gmail. That's what I understand. That has anybody who doesn't have a Gmail account had a problem with the email? I'd be curious to hear. And if any, just let me know. But they do go out. They take time. There are all kinds of issues. It's a sort of a generic problem affecting many, many, many people, and we're working whatever so I'm not, our tech team is doing that. So anyway, just wanted to make that up. And what we are, please God, going to be doing just to make it easier and to solve this problem coming up for the winter session, we're going to send up that we'll have a WhatsApp group. So we can always send out our announcement by WhatsApp, and that's just another way to sort of remind people of all our classes. But we'll send that to you, but just to let you know. Okay, I wish everybody, if I may say so, a wonderful 2026, a happy New Year. We can say that all the time, if I may, and want to thank you, Rav Noach. Always a pleasure on two levels, of course, and really quoting your brother-in-law. Wow, I'm going to have to speak to your brother-in-law and tell him how proud I am of his. Happens to be my son, but he didn't tell us. But I will I will tell him that. And okay, thank you very much, and please God, we look forward to seeing you. We will. Yeah, we have a few new series coming up in the winter session. A lot of them this year are continuing. Like 8 of the classes are just continuing through the year, but we're adding a few more, and just stay abreast of all that. Stuff is on the website if you don't get the emails. Okay, I hope that's clear enough, and want to wish everybody Shabbat Shalom. Hope to learn with you soon. And
Shabbat
please invite a
shalom.
friend. In 2026, we charge you to come to Torah Moshe class. If you don't invite a friend, I don't want to say you're not welcome. That's not nice. But invite a friend to come who hasn't joined. Word of mouth is the best form of advertising. So it's also a lot cheaper, and it's more effective. So please do invite your friends to come along to whatever classes you like best, and that's great. Okay, everybody, Laila Tov, and
Thank you.
see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.